Hi, I'm Diane Smith. I'm a staff attorney at the Disability Rights Center, and I'm here today to talk to you about abbreviated and shortened school days. And what we mean by that is, in the state of Maine, every child has a right to attend school the same number of hours that the school day exists. So no child, whether they have a disability or not, should have a shortened school day. And what we hear sometimes is that school districts may call families to come and pick their child up because of behavioral issues on a regular basis, or send a child home regularly before the end of the school day, or even formally shorten the school day to less than the 6 hours that the other children are attending. So if that situation has happened to your child, this would be the webinar for you. And what we're going to talk about right now is a very new rule passed by the Department of Education about abbreviated school days. And the first thing the department did was define it. So an abbreviated school day means any day that a child eligible under this chapter, meaning a child in special ed, attends school or receives educational services for less time than age or grade peers without disabilities within the same school or school program. And what that also means is that if there's a separate program for special ed kids, that program needs to last the whole day as well. So that's in the regulations on page 4. If you move to the regulations on page 62, and you can get the regulations, the special ed regulations on the State Department of Education website, it defines what happens in the case of an abbreviated school day. There are two kinds of abbreviated school days. There's one for educational purposes, usually behavior, and another for medical purposes, meaning a child has medical or health-related needs that are so severe the child can't attend school the full day. So in the case of an educational need, meaning a child is having behavior problems that's getting him or her sent home from school early, it is the full expectation that children eligible under this chapter will attend school the equivalent amount of time as children without disabilities in the same school, and that every effort must be made by IEP teams to maintain children in full-day programs with supplementary aids and services. In other words, if services can be provided to that child to allow the child to make it for the whole day, the district needs to provide those services. An IEP team can provide an abbreviated school day for a child after the team addresses how the child will meet the system of learning results. In other words, learn all the material that the other kids are learning. A child cannot have fewer courses than a regular ed child. They need full access to the general curriculum, and they need to be able to take state and local assessments. So if everyone else is taking the MEPS, the child with a disability should be taking the MEPS as well, unless they're specifically exempted for another reason. But you cannot avoid the MEPS by having a shortened school day. And then the team needs to meet and create a reentry plan that will determine how the child is going to come back to school within 45 calendar days. And if the child is unable to come back to school full-time within 45 calendar days, the team needs to meet every 20 school days thereafter. And by meet, I mean an in-person meeting with the entire IEP team, including the parent. So if the child is going to have a shortened day and, for example, go home at 11 o'clock because of behavior, the IEP team needs to meet and develop a plan about how they're going to provide services so the child can attend school full day. Or maybe the child needs to be in a different program, but something needs to change before 45 calendar days are up for the child to come back in. And if that doesn't happen by the 45 calendar days, the team needs to meet every 20 days thereafter, every 20 school days, to continue to look at what needs to happen to bring that child back to school full time. So the old days where children were out on a shortened school day for years should no longer be the case. Now, if it's a medical need, like for example, sometimes we have clients who have cancer and receive radiation treatments that make them feel ill and they can't truly attend school full day, or they have fatigue, or some sort of asthmatic condition, for example, that requires them to go home in the middle of the day to use a nebulizer. If they're on a shortened school day for a medical reason like that, the team still has to meet, and they must review progress about returning to a full-time school day. They must review progress in the educational setting, and they still need to figure out whether the child will meet, how the child will meet the system of learning results and have full access to the general curriculum. Now, it is not necessarily the case that a child with a medical condition needs to take all the same number of courses as other kids, because that may not be medically possible. But that is the expectation in a behavioral situation. And the IEP team in a medical case needs to meet every 90 calendar days to figure out what needs to happen for the child to return to school. And one other thing that was recently changed in the regulations that I just want to make sure everyone is aware of, when a child is out on tutoring, and we're going to talk a little bit more about tutoring in the webinar on risk assessment, but tutoring has no minimum or maximum number of hours. It's the number of hours that a child needs to achieve FAPE, in other words, to meet the goals on their IEP and progress in the general curriculum. Sometimes you'll hear from a school district that tutoring can last no longer than 2 hours per day, and that's not true. As with everything else in the IDEA, tutoring plans are individualized and they must meet the child's needs. So the tutoring plan must be provided so that the child can have access to all the parts of the general curriculum and meet the goals on his or her IEP. I hope that makes sense. And if you have any more questions about abbreviated school day, or you have a child with a case that has a child had abbreviated school day case where a child is not going to school full time and needed some help, please feel free to contact us at the Disability Rights Center, 626-2774. Thanks.